Welcome back to another episode of the Woods Collab Podcast. My name is Mike Woods and this is
Nikisha Woods.
And we are the Woods Collab. So back with another episode, and today we're going to talk about accountability.
Dun, dun, dun.
Accountability. So we're going to talk about accountability, how we can hold ourselves accountable. Let's get right into it.
All right, so it all starts with you, right?
True.
Yeah, you. But it all starts with self. And so really just thinking about, okay, so when I make a mistake, when I do something that maybe rubs someone the wrong way, one, do I know it? Am I aware of it? Or maybe someone brings it to my awareness. And two, now that I'm aware of it, then what? Right? And so when you think about holding yourself accountable, what are some things you like to do to make sure you're holding yourself accountable?
All right. So once you're aware of the need to hold yourself accountable, it really comes down to doing something about it. Mm-hmm. That's the first and foremost. So we know ourselves better than anyone else. So it's good to have, and we'll talk about holding others accountable in a minute, but we know ourselves better than anyone else. So just really like looking in the mirror and saying, okay, what do I need to do in order to change the act, change the behavior, in order to achieve the results that you want to accomplish?
Yeah, and I think it's hard. Real talk, right? It's hard to say, oh, wow, this is what I could have done better. This is what I feel like I could have done better. This is what I was told I could have done better by my supervisor or the person that I interacted with. But at the end of the day, we feel justified in our actions, right? I responded the way that I responded because it was a trigger, because you put me on a defense, because I felt challenged, or my heart started to race, right?
Yeah. Whatever
the reason is, sometimes we want to stand in that truth of it's a justified response without thinking about, okay, but there were 5 other ways I could have handled it that may have not rubbed that person the wrong way. So I think it is real talk. It's like, yes, in the moment I felt justified and I responded the way that I responded. But at the end of the day, the outcome or the output wasn't what I wanted it to be.
Yeah. What do you think are some of the ways where to hold yourself accountable, 'cause especially in a workplace, depending on where you may work or where you do business or where you interact? It can be a sports team or a group of college students or whatever the case may be. What do you think is key in order to get to the point where you can hold yourself accountable? Because the flip side of that is not having awareness of your actions, or knowing something but just not doing anything about it. So what is key? What you say? What's like the top thing that's key in order to get to the point where you're actively holding yourself accountable for a thing?
Okay, so we talked about awareness.
Yep.
So whether you are self-aware enough or someone has brought it to your attention.
Yeah. So you were, so now you know about it.
You know.
So then what?
That it could have been done differently.
Right.
Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe it was how you showed up and that type of thing. The next thing I would say is probably humility.
Okay.
It is so humbling to say, I jacked that up.
Yeah.
I really legit messed it up. The impact of that was not the intent.
Yeah.
And therefore, I need to come back, take a step back, and then reapproach the situation. It's not easy to do that, but what I have found is that leaders and just people you work with in general are more respected when they are showing that humility. And then the last piece I would add to that is trust. Because it requires humility, you're going to have to trust the environment, trust the person that you're communicating with in order to be able to say, I messed up. I apologize. I'm sorry. This is what I could have done better. And if it's a lack of trust there, you may feel harshly judged by the mistake. And so you may feel like fight or flight. I need to hide and I need to cover this versus stepping out and being vulnerable and admitting your mistake.
Yeah, that's good. And it's also it's a process throughout. So it's not like, even with us say being aware of it, it's not like we always catch it. You might act on something, be like, missed the opportunity to be accountable of self right there.
Yeah.
But even when you do it though, it feels really good. It feels good. So well, I'm saying when you hold yourself accountable, it's like, okay, wow, I owned up to that. I admitted to that. So we're going to talk about holding others accountable, and even others holding us accountable. But the thing where you could catch it first was like, you know what? I'm glad I caught that, and I'm glad I got ahead of that by holding myself accountable. It's like it's rewarding in a sense.
Yeah. I mean, it's rewarding. I do think that the flesh, right?
Yeah.
Your insecurities may try to show up, or you may get a little bit more nervous having to admit to something. And here's the thing, sometimes you're having to hold yourself accountable to things that people haven't figured out yet. So you may have messed up a project or misspoke on something and no one is aware of it, but So now it's like your little secret. And are you going to proactively state that, this deadline, I missed it because I didn't do X? Are you going to really say that? Or are you going to hold it and hope nobody finds out? Right. So my thought around that is own your stuff and people are going to figure out anyway. What happens in the dark comes to the light. So that's just really how I feel about it.
Yeah. And a few times in my professional career, clearly there's been time where I've been held accountable and I had to own up to something. And that was one thing where that light bulb goes off because maybe somebody else flipped the switch. Mm-hmm. But those moments where I was able to stop and pause and reflect and catch something myself, those are the ones where it sustained that much more. Mm-hmm. So it's really good. So we talked about holding ourselves accountable. So in leadership, in the path to leadership, being able to hold ourselves accountable is super key. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned being aware. And also we both admitted that it requires taking action accordingly for it.
So another thing to add when it comes to making sure that you're holding yourself accountable with other people is, of course, you want to be humble and you want to admit to the mistakes that you made, but it's okay to coach yourself through it, right? And sit down and think about, okay, so what could I have done differently? And what are the action steps that I can take next time moving forward? And in that conversation, when you're talking to your leader or your significant other, make sure that you bring it up, right? We have a 15-year-old. And let's say if we were going to scold him for something, or we're going to hold him accountable to the fact that he didn't take out the trash, he's probably listening to us. If he were to come to us and say, hey, mom, hey, dad, listen, I didn't take out the trash. I understand that that's my expectation, my responsibility as a young person growing up in the family, and that is how I contribute. So I apologize for not taking out the trash. And every day at 6 o'clock, I'll set a reminder so that I can take the trash out so that I don't let you guys down in the future. What would you do? You would just be like...
I would run.
Okay, we're good. We're aligned. We're on the same page. This feels great. So those scary moments of being coached or being yelled at or being judged, they don't exist because you're walking into that environment prepared and already having that self-reflection. Now, they may add more things, or they may say, you don't need to set an alarm, or whatever. You all can converse around that. But it disarms the scary parts of accountability when you can be prepared for it.
That's true. So some of the examples about holding ourselves accountable could be, we talk a lot about fitness, diet, career goals, education, and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So what are some examples you think about when it comes your way?
Yeah, so I know we talked about holding yourself accountable in front of others. Now, with that, I think it's more so I might not come to someone else and say, hey, I set this goal and I didn't pursue it, or I didn't hit it. But now I'm having to talk with myself to say, you know what can I do better next time? Why didn't I meet this goal? When I set that alarm clock to get up and work out, why did I hit snooze 5 times and just skip it? Mm-hmm. Okay, maybe I set it a little too early. And so now I'm thinking through how I can get better, and I'm basically coaching and mentoring myself so that I can hit the goals that I set. So self-accountability doesn't always have to be you falling on the sword for other people, but it's how do you reframe and retrain your thinking so that you can hit the goals you set. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. Now, I applied that same concept. I could think of 2 examples, 2 pivotal examples in my educational journey and in my professional journey. So educationally, just recently when I finished up school, my program was self-paced. So I literally had to go, I was able to go at my own pace. There's some times where I picked up the pace with taking classes. There's other times when, of course, you know this, had to balance some things out and slow down a little bit. And I was able to maybe do some more family things, if you will. But ultimately, I had to hold myself accountable to make sure I was reading my coursework, I was writing my papers, and I was honoring my own schedule in order to accomplish a goal, because no one else was coming around the corner to say, hey, you know what? This is something that you actually have to do right now. And then professionally, this was years ago in a professional sense when I started to become a bit more open to feedback. So there's a point where it's like, those that I'm reporting to are asking for certain things.
Okay.
And after I caught on to those desires of management or leadership, if you will, at a point, the switch went off for me. Because the one thing if somebody's asking something, it's another thing for it to click and to register. So I actually spent time to almost study those. And I was like, you know what? Instead of them asking me for the thing, how about I proactively do the thing?
Yep.
And I had to hold myself accountable. And then as far as good things coming out of that, good things start to come out of it because I start to build that trust. I start to have that reputation of execution. But ultimately that came with holding myself accountable for what was expected of me. So then it also comes with making sure I'm understanding what's expected. So make sure I'm doing those things to know that my performance is contingent upon me holding myself accountable.
Yeah, it starts with you, right?
For sure.
For sure. So this has been a good talk about self-accountability and making sure that that starts with you first. So making sure that you're reflecting, that you're having that awareness, that real talk moment with yourself. And sometimes it can be a goal that you set for yourself and you're like, oh my gosh, like how can I get better? What are some of the things that I need to do to improve in the future? And then you push forward and then you hold yourself accountable. And sometimes it can be that humility that you need trust for when you're communicating with others so that you can go before them and you can be proactive. You can communicate the things that you can do better moving forward because you are holding yourself accountable. So that's self-accountability. Hold yourself accountable, self-reflect, and all that good stuff. This has been the Woods Collab. Again, Nikisha Woods and
Mike Woods.
Thank you so much.